Hey everyone, and welcome to What Did I Miss? Where today I will be breaking down all the references, Easter eggs, and things that you may have missed while watching the second episode of Star Trek Picard's second season, titled Penance. The title of the episode, Penance, refers to the act of self-inflicted punishment that many religious people believe will guide their own absolution from whatever they believe they have done wrong. However, it seems that Q is the instrument of Picard's penance this season, as he has allowed Picard to survive the events we saw in the last episode in order to stand trial once again as he sees fit. Q does not come out and state what Picard has done that has angered him so, but it may be that Picard cheated death in the first season of the show and is now living as an android. Q does seem to be a bit off, and Picard even believes him to be unstable, so this may be a hint that Q and perhaps the Q Continuum are in some state of turmoil. After his appearances on The Next Generation, John de Lancie appeared as Q several more times, mostly on the series Star Trek Voyager. There, he not only had a son, played by his actual son, but also took part in a civil war within the Continuum and the assisted suicide of another member of the Q. These events were left open-ended with the ominous warning that they would have dire consequences for the Continuum, and we may be seeing those consequences play out over this season and next. If Q is dying, I can think of no worse slap in the face to know that he will be outlived by Picard, a mortal man who has now cheated death. So Picard's penance may be to show Q that he deserves to live on now as an android after Q is gone. The episode begins with the sounds of sirens and weapons fire, and the Earth covered in a shield. We can see that Earth is heavily polluted, which is a sign that in this new future, industry was favored over science. Q even makes a remark a bit later that in this timeline, the people of Earth did not try and save the planet, but instead kept it on life support. So this shield is probably not just a protective barrier against attacks, but also acts as a substitute for the Earth's ozone layer. When Picard asks Q where the crew of the Stargazer is, Q states that this is very yesterday's Enterprise of him. This is a clever in-joke, as the events depicted this season are very similar to a Next Generation episode titled Yesterday's Enterprise. In that episode, reality is also changed due to the Enterprise C being thrown into a future time period by a temporal anomaly, similar to the anomaly that the crew of the Stargazer were staring at when we last saw them. As I said in my video about the first episode this season, it is made to appear like Q is what caused Picard and the rest of the cast to traverse into this new reality, but this could be a misdirection of sorts. If this season is taking a cue from the episode Yesterday's Enterprise, it would mean that the crew of the Stargazer, and mainly Picard, is responsible for the changes in this reality and not Q, and Q has just made them aware of the changes. In the episode Yesterday's Enterprise, Guinan was the only person aware of the changes to reality, and helped Picard make the decision to return the Enterprise C to their own time and their destruction, which fixed the main timeline. In this episode, we learn that the Borg Queen is also sensitive to changes in the timeline, and she is conveniently available for this mission as well. While walking around the new Chateau Picard, Q opens a set of doors and states, "Through a Mirror Darkly," which is the second title of a Star Trek episode that Q will reference. In a Mirror Darkly is the name of a two-part episode in the Star Trek Enterprise catalog that saw that crew visit the Mirror Universe in what serves as a spiritual successor to two original series episodes, The Tholian Web and Mirror Mirror. Picard series executive producer Akiva Goldsman has stated that what we are witnessing in this season of Picard is not the Mirror Universe, but that at one point the Mirror Universe was considered for the season. Ultimately, him and the writers chose to create a new universe, mainly because a Mirror Universe version of Picard already exists in the comic books, and according to Mr. Goldsman, he thought that character was so cool that he didn't want to mess him up. When Q and Picard enter the trophy room, there are a lot of relics from other alien races on display, but one of the most prominent is the Klingon torchbearer armor last seen on the series Star Trek Discovery. Q also lists off some of Picard's triumphs as well as the names of the skulls of his victims on display, and the first one he mentions is Gul Dukat. Gul Dukat was a major figure in the Cardassian Empire and was the most prominent villain on the series Deep Space Nine. Q states that he was killed in the Ithian forest, which may be a reference to the Ithian tree, which was a plant said to be found on Cardassia Prime in the novel The Never-Ending Sacrifice. In a bit of irony, in the main reality, Dukat was also killed, but at the cost of Captain Sisko's life, only for Sisko to reappear as a prophet. In this reality, Dukat once again takes a captain with him when he is killed, only for Picard also to come back, this time as a synthetic. Next, Q shows Picard the skull of General Martok, another major character on the series Deep Space Nine. General Martok is also killed during the events of that series, but it is discovered that he is a changeling imposter, and the real Martok is later rescued from a POW camp along with Worf and others. Q states that Martok was killed in armed combat, another thing that Martok endured while in said POW camp, but Q also says that a bioengineered virus had wiped out most of the Klingon homeworld by that time. I can't help but think that this is a reference to the Klingon augment virus that was responsible for Klingons looking like humans in the 22nd century. The events surrounding this virus were shown in the Enterprise episode Divergence, but in reality, this storyline was put in place to explain the differences between how Klingons looked on the original series and how they looked starting in the first motion picture. But in that episode of Enterprise, it was discovered that the virus could be used to eliminate all Klingons, and one of the individuals responsible for this strain of the virus just happens to be Eric Soon, a member of the Soon family who at the time was not involved in the development of artificial intelligence, but was more interested in augmented human DNA. Later in this episode of Picard, we see a holographic statue of a character we have yet to meet named Adam Soon. So it is very likely that the Soon family are responsible for much of what has changed in this timeline. Next, Q details the death of director Sarek, who Picard evidently decapitated on the steps of the Vulcan Science Academy. This revelation had to cut Picard pretty deep, as he had developed a strong bond with Sarek before his death, and even shared his Katra. Q also states that this was done in front of his wife and son, who we know better as Amanda Grayson and Spock. However, since Vulcan and Earth have been at war, it is quite possible that Spock was never born, since his mother Amanda Grayson is human and would probably not have met and fell in love with Sarek in this timeline. While he is describing these events, Q reveals that in this timeline Picard is a part of an organization known as the Confederation, not the Federation. This has obvious connections to the Confederacy that existed in the southern states of America in the 19th century that started a civil war. The Confederacy were mostly concerned about keeping slavery from being outlawed in America, and in a similar fashion, we can see that slaves are used by the Confederation in this new reality. When Q leaves, we once again see the android Harvey approach Picard. This android being named Harvey may be a reference to the James Stewart movie Harvey, in which the main character is able to communicate with an invisible rabbit. The fact that Picard is the only one who can see Q is probably another reference to the story. This model android is the same model that was a part of the Mars Revolt that led to the ban on synthetics as witnessed during the events of the first season of Picard. Also, if you did watch my video about the first episode of the season, I know that I'm going over some of these same references again, but I'm also not sure who watched my first video and who did not, so I want to cover everything. I promise I won't bring up these same references every week though. After the intro, the camera pans around Picard's study and we see a wooden plaque with the letters RF written on it. This could be a memorial to Picard's brother Robert Picard or his son Rene Picard, both of whom were seen in the Next Generation episode Family. In the main universe, both also died in a fire sometime before the events of the movie Generations, so it is possible that in this timeline both also died under similar circumstances. Next we see that Seven is no longer an ex-Borg drone and is referred to by her actual name Annika Hansen. She and her parents were assimilated when she was 6 years old and had lived as a Borg until she was rescued by Captain Janeway and the crew of the Voyager. As she is being briefed on what is happening in the Vulcan War, her husband asks if she wants to be briefed by General Sisko. This has to be this reality's version of Benjamin Sisko, the captain of the Defiant and Deep Space Nine. He was also one of the most active captains during the Dominion War in the main reality, so it makes sense that he would be a prominent general in this war as well. I know that Seven needed to talk to Rios, but man, I was really hoping we would get to at least hear Avery Brooks' voice in this scene. When Elnor wakes up, he's on the run in Okinawa, Japan during a rebellion. The person he is with makes it seem like they are destroying a building for every alien planet that has been decimated, including Cardassia and Romulus. I thought that this was very similar to the tradition of the Federation signifying every member with a star in its flag, as a star is basically a large controlled explosion. When the security force there catches up with Elnor, they refer to him as "You Romulan scum," which I couldn't help but think was a reference to this infamous line from another sci-fi franchise.
You rebel scum.
When we meet up with Agnes Jurati, she is in a lab and is communicating with an AI cat. I could not confirm this at the time of recording this video, but I have heard Patton Oswalt's voice enough to believe that he is the voice of Agnes's AI cat. Patton Oswalt is one of my favorite actors, and I am so glad that he is now officially a part of the Star Trek universe. The cat's name, Spot 73, is a reference to the real-life cat that Data had on the Enterprise D, named Spot, and the use of the number 73 may be a reference to Trek 73, a computer game that came out in 1973 based on the original series. The Borg Queen makes her appearance as a prisoner of the Confederate Earth and looks very similar to the design we are used to seeing, and not like the Borg Queen we saw last episode. After being played by actresses Alice Krige and Susanna Thompson, this queen is played by actress Annie Werschling and is probably a different queen than the one we saw in the Voyager finale. In another Star Trek time-bending paradox, Annie Werschling's first television role was on the series Star Trek Enterprise as a different character in the episode Oasis. The Queen refers to Seven as tertiary adjunct of Unimatrix 01, which was Seven's full designation, and in the Voyager episode Survival Instinct, we met 3 other members of Unimatrix 01 who also escaped the Borg Collective, but were unable to live apart. While the Queen is being held captive, you can hear the computer in the background state that it has engaged interplexing signal nullifiers. An interplexing beacon is what the Borg tried to create on the main deflector of the Enterprise E in the film First Contact in order to contact the Borg in that time period. The Queen probably tried to create a similar signal here, but it was nullified by the technology that this Earth possesses. When Picard meets the Queen, she refers to him as Locutus, the name given to him by the Borg Queen during the Next Generation episode The Best of Both Worlds after his assimilation. If you recall, in the last episode of Picard, that different Borg Queen referred to Picard by name and not as Locutus, which is possibly a clue that she is also from a different timeline. Picard deduces, with the Queen's help, that they need to travel back to Los Angeles in 2024 to find something called the Watcher. To do this, Picard brings up the idea of creating a slingshot around a star, as Kirk's Enterprise did it on multiple occasions. He is referencing 2 episodes of the original series in which the Enterprise completed this maneuver, as well as in the movie The Voyage Home. When we see a shot of this reality San Francisco, there is a large holographic statue of someone named Adam Soon saying the phrase, "A safe galaxy is a human galaxy." We have not seen an Adam Soon before, but this is probably the character that Brent Spiner is playing when the crew makes it back to Los Angeles in 2024. As I stated earlier, the character Eric Soon appeared on Enterprise and was obsessed with human augment science. So it's very possible that Adam Soon is Eric's not-so-distant relative and is responsible for his passionate feelings about this science. Human augments were people that were genetically engineered from birth, and their creation led to a war in the 1990s. The main figure in that war was an augment named Khan Noonien Singh, who also had a couple of run-ins with Captain Kirk and the crew of the Enterprise in the original series episode Space Seed and the movie The Wrath of Khan. Augments believed that they were better than the non-augmented human population, and this feeling of superiority is echoed in the propaganda in this new reality. Just before the end of the episode, Elnor is shot by Confederate forces and appears to be in bad shape. There have also been scenes of Raffi crying while standing over him in various trailers, so there is a good chance that Elnor won't make it. However, if and when the crew are able to change the events in this past, this reality would be erased, so Elnor would return back to life. This would mean that they will have to leave him behind when they travel back in time, and that we may not see Elnor for most of this season. At least he got in one cool fight scene where he once again proved that he is the biggest badass in the history of Star Trek. Well, that was all I saw this week, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please hit that like button if you have enjoyed it, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?